Alright, so we're going to be removing that differential cover today and replacing it with some aluminum one that has a drain and fill plug on it because, that one doesn't. And I still have the bed off of the truck, so I will be doing most of the work from the top. I have the spare tire removed right now, so this is very feasible from down here, but whatever, maybe I will do it from down here. Anyway, I'm going to loosen up all the bolts around the bottom side and remove them and then leave one of the top bolts in and let it drain according to the instructions. And go from there. Okay, I got all but that nut or bolt right there taken off, and it's not draining yet. And I'm gonna try and pry it off one-handed, like right here maybe. No. Maybe I'll get it going in the... Yeah, no, that ain't happening. 1 second. Okay, so I found what works. Right here on the bottom of this axle, which I believe is a Sterling 10 1/4, there's a couple of little tangs sticking out. I just shoved the screwdriver hard up into the RTV sealant or whatever in there, and I'm just working the screwdriver back and forth like this, and out she goes. Ooh. So I'll let that drain for a minute. Hopefully I unplugged it. That would suck, because my drain pan's filling. Anywho, let that do its thing and then pull it off, see what's there. Check out the size of that meat grinder. Thing's huge. So when I got it off, I noticed in the housing, the casting of the housing, there's a couple of low spots down there. Not that there's anything going to be in there, but just when you drain everything, make sure you kind of get in there and wipe those out really well, because whatever sludge is going to build up will find its way down there, I would think, due to gravity eventually. Since this has been parked for a few days, up there is rather dry. Down there is rather moist. In fact, I still got some more I gotta sweep out of there. So, looks like I'm almost ready to get the other cover and prep it for installation, I suppose. Gotta clean off the Gotta clean off the surface still around the outside because it's still got goop on it. I don't think there's any high spots. Looks like it's still freshly machined, more or less. Anyway, that's all I can see from here. Hopefully everything's alright. I really don't know how to check the ring and pinion for slop at this point, but that's not what I'm doing right now. Lights come back to me. Okay, got myself a sharpened screwdriver, or more commonly known as a chisel, and what I'm going to do is take it, lay it flat against the mating surface here, or the sealing surface, and just go along and remove the gunk from the previous sealant application. And then once I'm done with that, the surface is all prepped and I'm ready to put the new one on. Be careful not to let this stuff fall in there. So I'm going to put the phone down now, so I don't have any issues later on down the road, because we don't want anything sharp like removing a burr from here with this to fall in there, because that'll prematurely wear that thing out. Not what I want to have. Anyway. Okay, so I've gone around with the chisel. Bear in mind that that chisel is completely dull now, so if it was sharp before, it will not be after this operation. Be sure you've got permission from whomever the chisel's owner is to use it for this, because it will have to be resharpened. And in the process of dulling my chisel, I found these nicks on the bottom of my sealing surface. So I've got to take a file and very carefully press it flat, being sure to grind across in a general thiswardly direction to keep the filings from going in there again. So it'll just be a very light touch just to knock down the high spots. This one's the worst over here. That was the first one I found. Put a nice ching in my blade. Then once I'm done with that, I'll be good to go. I hope. This time, for real. So now I'm gonna start prepping my diff cover. I've changed, or I'm wanting to install this one because it has an O-ring instead of the whatever, the RTV stuff. I prefer this just, well, for now, just because I think I can pull it on and off to inspect things more often without having the trouble of resealing everything. I can just wipe it off and screw it back on instead of gooping it. Additionally, the higher end model actually comes with a viewport here. Mine just comes with a plug, of course. This comes with a fill port and a drain port right at the bottom. Again, this won't drain out that bottom chamber that's right here in the axle casting itself. So for general fluid changes, this is great, but it's not going to be very thorough. So I don't know, however often you actually change your axle oil, maybe pull this off once every third time or something. I don't know. I have no idea. But I'll probably pull it off every time just for kicks and giggles, because this will be a lot easier to do. Alright, I got this on the bench and I've put several plugs in already. So it's all sealed up from the bottom down here, and this one happens to be magnetic, which is kind of nice. And I'm going to put the top one in with, I guess they gave me two. One was magnetic and one was not. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to put the magnetic one up here just for giggles. That one's plugged. Can't see it, but it is. This O-ring going in was a little tricky. So I started over here and it was kind of loose, and I just sort of put it in all the way around, and then it got tight because I was working around both sides at the same time. And I got to here and I didn't have enough, and I was like, that's funky. So what I did was I pulled it back on this side to about here, and then on each straight piece I pulled it tight a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, and then wrapped it around here, and then pulled it tight, and then wrapped it around and pulled it tight, and so on. And that got me almost enough. And then I did the same thing over here, you know, pulling it tight on the straights and then wrapping it around, and then I had just enough. I'd imagine that would go a little differently and need more times back and forth to get it exactly right, but it's close enough, I think. This is also the bottom side, which, if anything, you'd want to have more O-ring on this side anyway. So start at the top and work your way around, and when it's too short, pull back one side and stretch it, and then if it's still too short, pull back the other side and stretch it, so you get all the extra down here where it really counts. And I think I'm going to try and put that on, see how it works. Well, because I'm me, all of these bolts are getting anti-seize put on them. I've got 3 in there holding it together right now, and everything lines up. Everything's pretty well matched. I like how it's turning out so far. Filler holes in a nice spot, so we'll throw it together and see how it goes. Okay, so on the front side of the axle, this is the front driver's side, because that's the drive shaft. On the bottom side of here, there's this fill plug. And it's actually the max full level. So what I'm going to do is take this out and then put gear oil, whatever, 80, 90 weight, whatever the book calls for, in here from the top, because it's easier, and then just go until this one starts leaking everywhere and then clean up the mess afterwards. That way I know it's full to factory spec, and it is for sure correct. So I'm gonna do that and then see how everything looks when it's all put together. Okay, so normally we would take this type of setup with whatever gear oil you're going to put in the rear end, and you'd pump it through the hose up into wherever that filler port was on the side of the axle. But since I'm cheating and I don't currently have a bed on, I'm just going to use a funnel into my conveniently placed filler hole right there. So we'll see how that goes. Ooh, maybe I can even make a mess on camera. Yep, big mess. And where is this going? Sure. That'll work. And then I can go. Oh, yep, big mess. Glug, glug, glug. Yeah, I'm gonna not do this. Anyway. Now my hands are stuck. So I'm just waiting at the moment for that to fill up to a point where it's gonna start leaking out the side there. I think this is a fairly large sump now, so it's gonna take more than just this container. So I'm gonna stop rolling when I get a free hand, maybe. And okay, so the last bit is going down there, and oh, drive shafted. We have success. So I'll just finish wasting that, I suppose. I'll wait for it to slow down and reach equilibrium or whatever level it's going to try and get to. Not a big deal. Oil's cheap, I suppose. And that'll prevent foaming issues. Because if I were to plug it now, I think it would be overfull. And I don't know what that does, but I've heard guys had issues with foaming fluids in their differential, which is not particularly good any way you slice it. So that works rather well, going with a funnel. That was about 1.5 of these containers, so I don't know, 7 quarts. This was purchased at a local auto parts store, no name brand, whatever. It is what I used. There's probably better, could be worse. It's better than what was in there. That stuff smelled nasty. So, yeah, funnel works. Pump would have taken quite a while. Just so you know. Yep, just put the last plug in up here. That's definitely meant to be installed from this vantage. Tried it from above, had not much success. Probably could have done it better with a big extension, but that just seems silly when there's all this room down here with no spare tire. So that's done. Looks good. The instructions say to run it for at least 25 miles, which I'm guessing is to heat it up, and then refill it if necessary and retorque the bolts, which would be all of these around here. They weren't torqued very tight. They called for 11 to 14 foot-pounds, which isn't terribly much on a hex key. Or maybe it's a lot on a hex key, I don't know. But I'll do that. That's one trip to work and back. So, easy enough. And I'll go from there. So yeah, that was how to install a new diff cover and change the fluid at the same time, I think. Hopefully. Tell me if you think otherwise. And I'll review this later if it has some weird wonky failure. Otherwise, I was going to go with the later model Ford aluminum cover because it had cooling fins on it. But I liked this one because it has a drain plug. And, oh yeah, it's right there. And the factory Ford aluminum cover did not have a drain plug. If it did, or if I was adventurous enough to install one, I would have gone that way because it was a lot cheaper, or would have been a lot cheaper. So we'll see. Hopefully this helps.